I sang out of tune, would you stand up and walk out?
The show, The Wonder Years reboot, which was set here in Montgomery.
The Wonder Years looked like innocent nostalgia, a sweet show about growing up in the 60s. Behind that childhood innocence, a lawsuit destroyed the show. Cast members were traumatized, and one adult narrator never got paid what he deserved. These are 20 secrets about the Wonder Years hidden for decades. Number 20. The show was nearly canceled. After 4 episodes, The Wonder Years premiered in January 1988 as a mid-season replacement, and ABC executives hated it immediately. The network expected a traditional family sitcom with jokes and laugh tracks, but what they got was melancholic, poetic, and deliberately paced. Test audiences were confused, expecting comedy, but receiving drama dressed as a coming-of-age story. ABC ordered only 6 episodes initially, fully prepared to cancel after the minimum commitment. Network executives complained that the show was too slow, too sad, and that Fred Savage wasn't cute enough to carry an entire series. They demanded rewrites that would make it funnier and faster, more like traditional sitcoms that delivered reliable ratings. Creator Neil Marlins refused every suggestion, arguing that the show's distinctiveness was precisely what would make it special if given time to find an audience. The first episode that aired after the pilot received massive critical acclaim, with reviewers calling it groundbreaking television that elevated the family drama genre. The audience response was strong enough that ABC reluctantly ordered more episodes, still skeptical but unwilling to cancel something critics loved. The show's survival past those first 4 episodes was never guaranteed, dependent entirely on critical praise overriding network instincts to eliminate anything that didn't fit established formulas.
Kind of relive it again, but the last lines of the original Wonder Years.
It seems like growing up is a process of giving those things up, one by one.
Number 19. Daniel Stern recorded all his narration in a tiny recording booth. Daniel Stern, who provided the iconic adult Kevin narration, recorded every line in a small recording booth without seeing footage or interacting with other cast members. He received scripts and direction about emotional tone, but worked in complete isolation from the production happening on set. Stern would record for hours, doing multiple takes of every line while trying to capture the specific blend of nostalgia, humor, and melancholy that defined adult Kevin's perspective. The recording process was tedious and emotionally demanding, requiring Stern to access memories of his own adolescence while remaining true to the character's specific experiences. He developed the narration voice organically, finding a tone that sounded reflective without being condescending, warm without being sentimental. The producers would edit his recordings to match footage, sometimes using takes Stern didn't think were his best because they synchronized perfectly with Fred Savage's performance. Stern rarely visited the set, meaning he never developed relationships with cast members during production, despite his voice being the show's defining element. He worked alone for 6 years, creating one of television's most memorable performances without the collaborative energy that typically defines acting. The isolation was creatively lonely, but allowed Stern to focus entirely on crafting the perfect adult voice reflecting on childhood, with appropriate distance and affection. Number 18. Fred Savage was only 12 years old. When production started,
You really killed him, huh?
Yeah. Well, they weren't much.
Tell me about it.
I'm treated by them.
Fred Savage was 12 years old when he started playing Kevin Arnold, just slightly older than the character he portrayed in early episodes. His youth created enormous pressure, carrying an entire series while managing schoolwork, childhood development, and growing fame simultaneously. Savage's parents were protective, but also ambitious, recognizing their son's talent while trying to shield him from Hollywood's worst aspects. The production schedule was grueling, with Savage working maximum hours allowed for child actors, while tutors provided minimal on-set education. He missed normal childhood experiences, birthday parties, and school events sacrificed to production demands that couldn't accommodate a child star's personal life. Savage was naturally talented but still learning craft, meaning directors had to balance encouraging his instincts with teaching him techniques that would sustain performance across multiple seasons. His co-stars, particularly Dan Lauria and Ally Mills, who played his parents, became protective, ensuring he wasn't exploited or pushed beyond reasonable limits. Savage handled the pressure remarkably well initially, delivering nuanced performances that didn't seem possible from someone so young. But the cost of that early success became apparent later, with Savage stepping away from acting after the show ended to reclaim the childhood that fame had stolen. His youth made the show possible, but also ensured he paid prices that adult actors wouldn't have. Number 17. The show's music budget destroyed its syndication value.
Hey man, looks like you lost your clothes.
Got on me, lend me your ear.
The Wonder Years featured extensive period-appropriate music from the 1960s and 70s, with classic rock songs defining every episode's emotional landscape. The producers spared no expense licensing authentic recordings from artists like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan. Each episode cost hundreds of thousands of dollars in music rights alone, money the network accepted during the original broadcast, because ratings and critical acclaim justified the investment. But this lavish music budget created catastrophic problems for syndication, where the licensing deals expired and would require renegotiation at costs that made the show economically unviable for local stations. The show couldn't be syndicated profitably without the music that defined it, but including the music made the costs prohibitive. For years, The Wonder Years essentially disappeared from television, too expensive to air despite its popularity and cultural significance. When the show finally appeared on DVD and streaming services decades later, many songs had been replaced with cheaper alternatives, fundamentally changing episodes that had been built around specific musical choices. The music budget that made the show artistically successful destroyed its commercial afterlife, demonstrating how creative decisions during production could have devastating financial consequences that took years to manifest and couldn't be easily corrected. Number 16. Danica McKellar struggled with being defined by Winnie Cooper.
Wow, look at that. When I was in the 9th grade, I remember studying geometry theorems and saying,
7 math. That's a 1481.
Danica McKellar, who played Winnie Cooper, struggled for decades with being permanently identified with the character she played as a child. Winnie became iconic, the idealized girl next door that defined a generation's idea of first love and adolescent romance. But McKellar was a real person with ambitions beyond acting, particularly in mathematics, where she demonstrated exceptional ability. She attended UCLA and earned a mathematics degree, later publishing academic papers and becoming an advocate for mathematics education. But no matter what she accomplished, people still saw her primarily as Winnie Cooper, the character she'd played decades earlier. Job interviews, academic conferences, and personal relationships all began with people processing their nostalgia for the show before seeing McKellar as herself. She wrote books about mathematics aimed at young girls, trying to use her fame constructively while establishing identities separate from the character. The effort was only partially successful, with most media coverage focusing on Winnie Cooper writes math books, rather than acknowledging McKellar's genuine expertise and contributions to mathematics education. She eventually made peace with being forever associated with the Wonder Years, accepting that the character was part of her, whether she wanted it to be or not. But that acceptance came after years of frustration and resentment about having her own identity subsumed by a fictional teenager. Number 15. The Narrator. And the actors never met during production.
The Maginot Line of family resistance. Things were gonna be okay.
But they were like Flintstones vitamins, but shaped like Pac-Men.
Yeah.
Daniel Stern and Fred Savage, who together created Kevin Arnold, never actually met during the show's production. Stern recorded narration in isolation, while Savage acted on set. Their performances united only in post-production editing. This disconnect was deliberate, with creators wanting adult Kevin's perspective to feel genuinely separated from young Kevin's experiences, rather than influenced by watching Fred Savage's actual performance. The separation created a unique dynamic where two performers created one character without collaboration or communication about choices either was making. Stern would record his reactions to young Kevin's behavior without seeing how Savage had actually played those moments, trusting editors to make his tone match Savage's performance. The technique worked brilliantly, creating the impression of an adult genuinely reflecting on childhood rather than commenting on events as they happened. But it also meant the two actors who defined Kevin Arnold existed in completely separate production worlds, never discussing character or comparing interpretations. They finally met years after the show ended at a reunion event, awkwardly greeting each other as strangers despite having created television's most memorable coming-of-age story together. The meeting was anticlimactic. Two people who'd shared a character but not an experience, connected by editing rather than collaboration. Number 14. The Show deliberately avoided showing major historical events.
It was Dad, the Maginot Line of family resistance.
The Wonder Years was set during the late 1960s and early 70s, a period defined by the Vietnam War, civil rights struggles, and massive social upheaval. But the show deliberately avoided depicting major historical events directly, showing them only through the Arnold family's suburban bubble. The creators made a conscious decision to present history as background noise rather than foreground drama, the way most middle-class families actually experience distant conflicts. Vietnam was referenced through Kevin's brother Wayne serving overseas, but never shown directly or explored beyond its impact on one family. Civil rights movements happened off-screen, occasionally mentioned but never dramatized. The approach was controversial, with critics arguing that showing the 60s without engaging its defining conflicts was dishonest and cowardly. But the creators insisted that Kevin's perspective was inherently limited by age and privilege, that showing a white suburban kid as hyper-aware of social justice issues would have been false. The decision meant the show could never be confused with documentary history, instead offering one specific experience of a complicated era. This narrow focus was simultaneously the show's strength and its most significant limitation, providing authentic middle-class perspective while ignoring the larger context that made the period historically significant. Number 13. Josh Saviano quit acting entirely after the show ended.
It's kind of a parabolic way of grading. Imagine these, that's it.
Bell bottoms and the floral shirts and all the trends, but it was really the moral compass.
Josh Saviano, who played Kevin's best friend Paul Pfeiffer, walked away from acting completely when the Wonder Years ended and never returned professionally. He was 14 years old when the show was canceled, exactly the age when child actors typically transition to adult roles. But Saviano made the opposite choice, enrolling in regular school and pursuing education rather than auditions. He attended Yale University, earned a law degree, and became a corporate attorney with no connection to the entertainment industry. His complete departure from acting was so absolute that internet rumors circulated for years, claiming he'd become Marilyn Manson, a false story that Saviano found both amusing and frustrating. He gave occasional interviews explaining his choice, describing how child stardom had been isolating and stressful, how he'd craved normalcy that acting couldn't provide. Saviano never regretted leaving or expressed interest in returning to entertainment, successfully building a life that had nothing to do with Paul Pfeiffer or the show that made him recognizable. His exit was clean and permanent, the opposite of child stars who struggle to recapture fame or reinvent themselves within the industry. He represented the path not taken, proof that child actors could successfully leave Hollywood and build meaningful lives elsewhere if they chose to. Number 12. The show was sued by Joe Cocker and lost.
Ooh, if I sang out of tune, would you stand up and walk out?
The show, The Wonder Years reboot, which was set here in Montgomery. The TV show.
The Wonder Years was sued by musician Joe Cocker over the use of his version of "With a Little Help from My Friends" as the show's theme song. The producers had licensed the song legally for the original broadcast, But the licensing agreement didn't cover all the ways the show would eventually be distributed. When the show moved to syndication and home video, Cocker's representatives argued that new licensing agreements were required with substantially higher fees. The lawsuit revealed how complicated music rights were in television, with different rights needed for broadcast, cable, syndication, home video, and eventually streaming. The show lost the lawsuit, forcing producers to pay additional fees and renegotiate terms that made the show significantly more expensive to distribute. The case became influential in entertainment law, establishing precedents about how music licensing worked across different distribution platforms. It demonstrated that even when producers thought they'd secured all necessary rights, technological changes and new distribution methods could create unexpected legal and financial obligations. The lawsuit was one of several factors that kept the Wonder Years off television and unavailable on home video for years, with legal complications making it easier for networks to simply not air it, rather than navigate the complex rights issues. The case taught the television industry expensive lessons about securing comprehensive rights that would cover future technologies and distribution methods nobody had imagined when original deals were negotiated. Number 11. Fred Savage's real brother played his TV.
Do the rest.
Since, I don't know, I was like 11 years old when we were doing Little Monsters. So this is definitely...
Brother. Fred Savage's actual older brother, Ben Savage, appeared in several episodes playing various characters before later starring in Boy Meets World. The family connection was kept quiet during production, with Ben cast based on talent rather than nepotism, according to producers. Having real brothers on set created interesting dynamics, with Fred and Ben's genuine sibling relationship informing their performances even when playing different characters. Ben watched Fred handle child stardom pressures firsthand, learning from his brother's experiences what to expect and how to navigate the industry's demands. Their parents managed both sons' careers carefully, applying lessons learned from Fred's Wonder Years experience to Ben's later success. The brothers' professional relationship was mostly positive, though competition and comparison were inevitable when both were child actors in the same industry. Ben's later success in Boy Meets World proved he was talented in his own right, rather than simply riding Fred's coattails, establishing his own identity separate from his famous brother. The family maintained close relationships throughout their careers, avoiding the dysfunction and rivalry that destroyed other show business families. Their story represented Hollywood at its best, a family that managed success without sacrificing relationships or damaging the children for profit. Number 10. The show's cancellation was announced during the final season.
And the thing is, after all these years, I still look...
Following multiple allegations of inappropriate conduct in his role as executive producer and...
ABC announced the Wonder Years cancellation midway through the 6th season, forcing creators to rapidly restructure the remaining episodes to provide series closure they hadn't planned. The network claimed declining ratings justified cancellation, though the show still performed respectably compared to other programs that received renewals. The real reason was economics, with the show's expensive production costs, particularly music licensing making it less profitable than cheaper alternatives. The cast and crew were devastated, having assumed they'd get at least one more season to properly conclude Kevin's story. Creator Neil Marland scrambled to rewrite the final episodes, compressing storylines and adding narration that would provide a definitive ending rather than cliffhangers. The rushed finale attempted to tie up 6 years of character development in a single episode, using adult Kevin's narration to explain what happened to everyone after high school. The result was emotionally satisfying but felt compressed, trying to cover years of future events in minutes of screen time. Fans appreciated getting closure, but recognized that the ending was forced by cancellation rather than organic to the show's pacing. The premature ending meant storylines the creators had planned were never filmed, including more exploration of Kevin's high school years and eventual departure for college. The show simply stopped rather than concluded naturally, another victim of television economics prioritizing profit over artistic completion. Number 9. Daniel Stern was paid significantly less than the on-screen cast.
Kid, You're a little bit of everything. Artist, scientist, act.
Daniel Stern, despite his narration being the show's defining element, was paid substantially less than the on-screen cast members because voice work was valued lower than physical performance. His contract classified him as a voice actor rather than a series regular, a distinction that meant lower pay and fewer residuals despite working on every episode. Stern provided the emotional core and perspective that made the Wonder Years distinctive, but his compensation reflected television's hierarchy that privileged visible performers over voice talent. The pay disparity became more frustrating as the show's success became inseparable from his narration, with critics and audiences specifically citing adult Kevin's voice as what elevated the show above typical family sitcoms. Stern negotiated for better terms as the show continued, but never achieved parity with actors who appeared on screen, even supporting cast members who had less impact on the show's identity. The situation exemplified how entertainment industry compensation was based on rigid categories rather than actual contribution or importance to a project's success. Stern never expressed public bitterness about the pay inequality, understanding that challenging the system risked his career. But privately, he resented being undervalued while his work was celebrated as essential to the show's artistic achievement. His experience revealed how even successful performers could be exploited when their contributions didn't fit traditional compensation models. Number 8. The show struggled with Fred Savage's puberty.
Dad.
Hey, just thought I'd mention it.
No meat, Lewis?
No.
Meet the
Actors, and there's always this exchange.
Fred Savage's voice changed dramatically during production, creating continuity problems and forcing editors to work around his adolescent vocal transitions. Early episodes featured Savage's pre-pubescent voice, but by the 3rd and 4th seasons, his voice was deepening unpredictably, sometimes changing noticeably between episodes supposedly set weeks apart. The production team tried various solutions, including recording Savage's dialogue in post-production when possible to maintain consistency, but nothing completely solved the problem. Directors had to carefully plan shooting schedules around Savage's voice, filming scenes in orders that accommodated the changes rather than following script chronology. The show's premise required Kevin to remain a young teenager, while Savage was aging normally, creating a disconnect between character and actor that became harder to hide. Savage's physical changes were equally problematic, with him growing taller and developing adult features while playing a character meant to be perpetually young. Wardrobe tried to minimize the changes, dressing him in ways that made him appear smaller and younger than he actually was. The struggle with Savage's puberty was shared by all shows featuring child actors, but the Wonder Years' specific focus on childhood innocence made the changes particularly disruptive. The show ended partly because Savage had simply grown too old for the character, his 15-year-old self unable to convincingly portray the 13-year-old Kevin that the show's timeline required. Number 7. Winnie's character was based on creator's real first love.
Kids ever since she lived across the street.
I didn't know what to say to you.
Winnie Cooper was based directly on Neil Marleen's real childhood girlfriend, with storylines and character traits lifted from his actual adolescent experiences. Marlins used the show to process his first love, recreating moments from his own life and exploring emotions he'd never fully examined. The real girl who inspired Winnie knew about the character and gave permission for her experiences to be dramatized, though her identity was kept private throughout the show's run. Marlins transferred his own adolescent confusion, romantic idealization, and heartbreak onto Kevin, writing what he knew rather than inventing scenarios. This autobiographical element gave Kevin and Winnie's relationship authenticity that purely fictional romance couldn't match, with dialogue and situations reflecting how teenagers actually talked and felt, rather than adult writers' approximations. The relationship's ups and downs mirrored Marlene's actual experiences, including the painful awareness that first loves rarely last, despite feeling eternal in the moment. Winnie wasn't a fantasy girlfriend, but a realistic portrayal of a smart, complicated girl dealing with her own problems, while Kevin projected his needs onto her. The autobiographical foundation meant Marlene's knew exactly how the relationship would end, having lived through the dissolution of his real first love decades earlier. That knowledge informed the writing from the beginning, ensuring Kevin and Winnie's romance was always bittersweet rather than simply sweet. Number 6. The show's writer's room was dominated by baby boomers, reliving their youth.
The show got picked up, so hence Becky Slater arose. When I read the script for Steady As She Goes, the first episode
The Wonder Years writer's room was filled with baby boomers in their 40s, revisiting their own childhoods through Kevin's experiences. Every storyline came from someone's actual memory, mining personal histories for material that felt authentic because it was. The writers would share stories from their adolescence, then collectively workshop how to translate those experiences into Kevin's specific circumstances. This approach created episodes that resonated with adults who'd lived through the 60s and 70s, recognizing their own experiences in Kevin's struggles. But it also meant the show was fundamentally about nostalgia rather than contemporary childhood, filtered through adult perspective, even when showing young Kevin's point of view. The writers were processing their own adolescent confusion and trauma decades later, using the show as a collective therapy session disguised as entertainment. The emotional honesty came from their willingness to revisit painful memories rather than sentimentalizing childhood as perfect or innocent. But the backward-looking perspective meant the show could never engage with how different childhood actually was for kids in the 80s when the show aired. The Wonder Years was always a show about the past made by people who'd lived it, offering memory rather than imagination. That limitation was also its strength, providing authenticity that fictional scenarios couldn't match, but also ensuring the show spoke primarily to adults reliving youth rather than actual children experiencing it. Number 5. ABC demanded a happy ending that the creators refused to film, and
I remember needing to get up for school. I remember the alarm going off 2 or 3 times, snoozing it, dragging myself out of bed. When my alarm would go off at 5.
ABC executives demanded that the Wonder Years series finale end with Kevin and Winnie together, married or at least definitively committed to each other. The network wanted audience satisfaction. The payoff to 6 years of romantic tension resolved in traditional happily ever after fashion. Neil Marlins refused completely, arguing that Kevin and Winnie staying together would betray everything the show had established about first loves and growing up. The creators knew that most people don't marry their middle school girlfriends, that growing apart is more common and honest than fairy tale endings. They wrote a finale where Kevin and Winnie broke up, acknowledging that their relationship had run its course and that both needed to move forward separately. ABC threatened to fire Marlene's and bring in other writers to create the happy ending they wanted, but Marlene's called their bluff, knowing the network couldn't replace him during the final episodes without causing disaster. The standoff resulted in compromise, with the finale showing Kevin and Winnie separating but leaving slight ambiguity about whether they might reconnect later. The ending satisfied neither the network's desire for clear romantic resolution nor the creators' preference for definitive breakup, but it preserved the show's emotional honesty, refusing to pretend that adolescent romance typically survives into adulthood just because audiences wanted that comfort. Number 4. The show made Fred Savage uncomfortable with fame. For life.
And then Bob came in, and it was very seamless for us also.
The Wonder Years made Fred Savage famous at 12 and deeply uncomfortable with celebrity for the rest of his life. He couldn't go to school normally, couldn't make friends without wondering if they liked him or his fame, couldn't experience adolescence privately while millions watched a fictional version weekly. The show consumed his teenage years, defining him permanently as Kevin Arnold in ways he couldn't escape or control. Savage tried returning to acting after taking breaks, but he was typecast as the sweet, earnest kid, even when playing adults. He eventually moved behind the camera, becoming a successful television director where he could work without being recognized or analyzed. The transition wasn't just career strategy, but psychological necessity, finding a way to stay in the industry while escaping the performance demands that had traumatized him. Savage rarely gave interviews about the Wonder Years, declining reunion opportunities and avoiding nostalgia events that would force him to revisit a period he'd rather leave behind. His relationship with the show was complicated, grateful for opportunities it provided, but resentful of costs it exacted. He never blamed the show or his parents directly, instead expressing generalized discomfort with child stardom's psychological impact. Savage's discomfort demonstrated how success and trauma could coexist, how achieving dreams could simultaneously damage you in ways that took decades to understand and process. Number 3. The show's depiction of Vietnam was heavily criticized by veterans.
I got to beware. I think it's time we stop.
The Wonder Years' handling of the Vietnam War was criticized by veterans who felt the show sanitized the conflict or used it as emotional manipulation without honest engagement. The show depicted Vietnam primarily through Kevin's brother Wayne's service, showing a family's worry without exploring the war's politics or morality. Wayne returned safely with minimal trauma, a resolution that felt dishonest to veterans who knew how many soldiers came home, damaged, or didn't come home at all. The show avoided depicting combat, casualties, or the moral questions that divided America during the war. This avoidance felt cowardly to critics who argued that setting a show during Vietnam required confronting what made that conflict different from previous wars. Veterans particularly objected to episodes using Vietnam as backdrop for Kevin's coming-of-age moments, treating the war as stage dressing rather than engaging with it as the defining event it was for Americans of that generation. The creators defended their choices, arguing that Kevin's limited perspective as a child was authentic, that he wouldn't have understood the war's complexity any more than most Americans at the time. But that defense didn't satisfy veterans who felt their experiences deserved more than shallow references in service of nostalgia. The criticism revealed tensions between artistic choices and historical responsibility. Questions about whether shows set during traumatic periods had obligations beyond their specific narrative focus. Number 2. Danica McKellar and Fred Savage's real relationship mirrored their characters.
Every day.
Yeah. And parents.
Yeah.
Music.
Danica McKellar and Fred Savage developed a real romantic relationship during production that mirrored Kevin and Winnie's on-screen dynamic, creating an uncomfortable blurring between fiction and reality. The two young actors spent countless hours together on set, developing genuine affection that complicated their performances. Their actual relationship went through cycles similar to what was scripted, with attraction, jealousy, and eventual breakup happening both in the show and in real life. The parallel relationships created strange feedback loops, with real emotions informing fictional performances and scripted situations affecting actual dynamics between them. The cast and crew knew about their relationship, but tried to maintain professional boundaries, understanding that teenage romance on set could become complicated quickly. When McKellar and Savage broke up in real life, they still had to perform romantic scenes, forcing them to access emotions they were actively trying to move past. The experience was painful for both, particularly McKellar, who felt more invested in the relationship than Savage. Years later, both acknowledged that the situation had been inappropriate and difficult, that putting teenage actors in romantic scenarios blurred lines that should have remained clear. Their experience became a cautionary tale about child actors and on-set romance, how the industry created situations that forced emotional vulnerability beyond what teenagers could healthily manage. Number 1. The show's legacy is nostalgia.
Turn me on, really.
Yeah, it's not what I heard, pal.
For a childhood that never actually existed. The Wonder Years became beloved for depicting a childhood that never actually existed. A sanitized, nostalgic version of the 60s filtered through adult wishful thinking. The show presented suburban life as fundamentally innocent, despite being set during America's most turbulent domestic period. It showed a middle-class white family experiencing minor problems while civil rights struggles, assassinations, and social upheaval happened somewhere off-screen. The childhood Kevin experienced was specifically white, male, and privileged, generalized as universal when it represented a narrow slice of American experience. The show's success came from telling baby boomers that their childhoods were as meaningful and poetic as they remembered, validating their nostalgia without challenging their memories or acknowledging how selective those memories were. Viewers who didn't share Kevin's specific demographic and historical experience still connected with the show because it depicted childhood emotions universally, even while portraying circumstances specifically. But that universalization erased the very real differences in how race, class, gender, and geography shaped actual 60s childhoods. The Wonder Years succeeded by creating a comforting lie that growing up in that era was primarily about first kisses and family dinners rather than the violence and change defining the period. That lie was beautiful and well executed, but it was still a lie, and its legacy is complicated by how perfectly it gave audiences the past they wished for, rather than the one they actually lived. The Wonder Years looked like perfect nostalgia, a childhood preserved in amber, but behind that sweetness was exploitation, trauma, and a fantasy that told comfortable lies about a complicated past. If these secrets changed how you see the show, share this story, because sometimes nostalgia costs more than memory admits.